Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are entering the Stone Zone, the hottest political show on radio today. There's a major fight brewing in the District of Columbia over President Donald Trump's nominee, Ed Martin, who is currently serving as the interim U.S. attorney. Martin has championed the president's agenda. He's already investigating the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and the actions of Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's dismissed the January 6th Capitol riot cases that were improperly brought. He is investigating the weaponization of the criminal justice system against President Trump and his allies. He also has strongly supported Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which has uncovered not millions, not billions, but trillions in waste, fraud, and corruption. But Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina is withholding his support for President Trump's nominee for U.S. attorney, a move that could result in radical leftist Judge James Boasberg actually choosing the person who would fill this role. Boasberg is, of course, the federal judge who ruled that President Trump doesn't have the executive authority to deport violent criminals who are here illegally. In fact, Boasberg could actually appoint former special counsel Jack Smith to the position currently temporarily held by Martin. Trump, who announced in December that Martin would serve initially as chief of staff of the Office of Management and Budget, then installed Martin as an interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia on January 20th, later formally nominating him to take over that position. But Martin's interim term on May 19th, 2025, and due to D.C.'s unusual status within the federal government, choice of who would fill that position could actually fall to Judge Boasberg. The powerful U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. has two roles, which make it one of the most powerful perches in the American legal system. It is a seat from which much of the lawfare directed at Trump and his supporters originated during Biden and the Obama presidency. Due to D.C.'s special status, the office serves a role similar to a local district attorney. But after taking over, Martin wasted no time turning the office's resources towards prosecuting violent crime after a unprecedented period of lawlessness under President Joe Biden saw local crime soar. But the office's secondary role is the reason Martin was installed and why his installation has struck fear in the hearts of the establishment. Martin has shifted the focus of the office, the most powerful U.S. attorney's office in the country, to corruption within the federal government itself. So instead of spending millions of dollars targeting everyday Americans like pro-life advocates who want to pray outside of abortion clinics, or practicing Catholics who want to go to the Latin Mass, or parents who go to school board meetings to object to the curriculum being forced on their children, Martin is pursuing criminals who've enriched themselves off of taxpayers or committed voter fraud and other serious crimes. There's talk that the president's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, who served very ably as co-chairman of the Republican National Committee during the last election, but who is a North Carolina native, could challenge Tillis for re-election if Tillis stands in the way of the president's crucial nomination. You heard it first right here in the Stone Zone. In the meantime, President Donald Trump has finally put to rest speculation that he is planning to run for another term in 2028. Now, Steve Bannon has very effectively trolled this idea when he was asked by Chris Cuomo how that would be possible, given the fact that the U.S. Constitution very clearly says that no person shall be elected to more than 2 4-year terms. Bannon glibly said, well, we're working on it. I don't think there's anything to work on. There is a constitutional prohibition, but it's very clear the president has enjoyed the speculation. He finally, however, put it to rest in his Meet the Press interview. Let's take a listen.
Are you seriously considering, Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution, or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, really a great Republican to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
And there you have it. Now, for those who thought that President Trump would just anoint Vice President J.D. Vance, well, that does not appear to be the case. Also, there's great historical precedent here. Ronald Reagan waited till the very last minute to anoint his 8-year vice president, George H.W. Bush. In 1967, former President Eisenhower, when asked who the 1968 nominee would be, well, he named possibilities of California Governor Ronald Reagan, Michigan Governor George Romney, Pennsylvania Governor William Scranton. But he forgot to mention his own long-suffering Vice President Richard Nixon, who, of course, ended up being the nominee in 1968, and the greatest single political comeback, well, until the comeback of Donald Trump in 2024. But Trump made it very clear that the race to be his successor would be wide open. Let's listen to him again from Meet the Press.
You are only 100 days in, but as we sit here today, who do you see as your successor, Mr. President?
Well, it's far too early to say that, but I do have a vice president, and typically it would be, and JD's doing a fantastic job.
He would be at the top of the list?
It could very well be. I don't want to get involved in that. I think he's a fantastic, brilliant guy. Marco is great. There's a lot of them that are great. I also see tremendous unity. But certainly you would say that somebody's the VP. If that person is outstanding, I guess that person would have an advantage. But I think the other people would all stay in unbelievably high positions. But, it could be that he'd be challenged by somebody. We have a lot of good people in this party.
Well, and there you have it. President Donald Trump acknowledging that J.D. Vance, his vice president, would be the front runner, but also acknowledging that it would be a spirited contest for the nomination. Interestingly enough, about a week ago, right here in the Stone Zone, I mentioned the idea that Marco Rubio has reemerged as a potential presidential candidate, but missing from the president's list is, of course, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe it's just that I think it's time for a woman president, and she should certainly be on any short list. Meanwhile, President Trump has announced that the radical Houthis have given up. They say they will stop bombing U.S. ships. He announced that they have sent up the white flag. The Houthis have announced they don't want to fight anymore, said President Donald Trump. They just don't want to fight, and we will honor that. We'll stop the bombings. They have capitulated. They say they will not be blowing up our ships anymore. Secretary of State Marco Rubio then said the job was to get the attacks on ships in the region to stop. If that's going to stop, we will stop. I would point out that the Houthis harassed not only U.S. ships, but ships of all nations in the Red Sea during the 4 years of the Biden presidency, but with no action by the U.S. government. President Trump said it was very good news and came in last night from a very good source, although he would not confirm who exactly told him that the Houthis had sent up the white flag of surrender. The United States, since mid-March, has hit some 800 Houthi targets, according to an April 27th statement by U.S. Central Command. Meanwhile, a Houthi spokesman named Mohammed al-Bukhati has denied that they will stop attacking ships in the Red Sea in a statement he gave to Bloomberg News. So whether the Houthis are just saving face or whether they truly do intend to continue bombing our ships, well, that remains to be seen. But Donald Trump is not a man to be trifled with. In the meantime, Biden-appointed Judge Jamal Whitehead has ordered the Trump administration to accept 1,200 additional refugees. This federal judge on Monday ordered the Trump administration to admit these refugees into the United States under a court order partially blocking the president's efforts to suspend the nation's refugee admissions program. The order from U.S. District Jamal Whitehead followed arguments from the Justice Department and refugee resettlement agencies over how to interpret the federal appeals court ruling that significantly narrowed an earlier decision from Judge Whitehead. During the hearing last week, the administration said it should not only have to process 160 refugees in the country, but it would likely appeal any order requiring it to admit thousands more. But the judge dismissed the government's analysis, saying it was required not just reading between the lines of the 19th Circuit's reading, but hallucinating new text that is simply not there. Yet another example of a federal judge exceeding their authority and interfering with the president's constitutionally based executive authority to make the nation safe. The refugee program, created by Congress in 1980, is a form of legal migration to the U.S. meant for people displaced by war, natural disaster, or persecution. Upon beginning his second term in January 20th of this past January, President Donald Trump issued a new executive order suspending the refugee program. Whitehead is, of course, a 2023 appointee of former President Joe Biden, who has been blocking enforcement of the president's order. Even the famously far-left Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals largely put Judge Whitehead's decision on hold this past March, finding that the administration was likely to win the case given the president's broad authority to determine who was allowed to enter the country. But the appeals court also said the government should continue processing those who have already been approved for travel to the United States before January 20th. During a hearing last week over how to interpret and enforce this appeals court ruling, the Justice Department lawyer David Kim said the government took it to mean that only refugees who should be processed for entry into the United States are those who were scheduled to travel to the United States within 2 weeks of Trump's order. There were only 160 migrants that met that definition, but now Biden's appointee insists that the Trump administration must allow another 12,000 migrants into the country. This is yet another blatantly unconstitutional overreach of the judiciary into the president's power to protect our border. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has directed the Pentagon to limit 20% of our four-star generals and admirals. As of 2023, there were 37 four-star generals and admirals across the entire military. This is in keeping with President Trump's order to cut the size and scope of the federal government, and both Hegseth and the president believe they can do so without jeopardizing our national defense or our national security. This new order by Hegseth directs the Pentagon to cut the number of general officers in the National Guard by 20% and to cut the total number of generals and flag officers across the entire military by 10%. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Stone Zone, and we'll be right back with the hottest inside political news anywhere on radio today.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. New York State Attorney General Letitia James is feeling the heat after a series of bombshell exposés showing a serial history of mortgage fraud. Let's listen to Letitia.
And you want me to sit in my seat and stand idly by and allow this craziness to happen? You could come after me if you want. But you elected me to stand up. You elected me to use the law. You elected me to go to court. You elected me to continue to challenge this administration. You elected me to stand up for the least of God's children. You elected me to continue fighting on. And I will fight on.
To me, that sounds like a politician in full panic mode, and it's understandable. Joining us now is Sam Antar. Sam is a former certified public accountant whose career trajectory took a remarkable turn. He was once convicted as a participant in one of the largest security fraud schemes in the country. He paid his debt to society and reinvented himself using his forensic accounting skills and talents to help government agencies, law enforcement organizations, law firms, and others find public corruption and misconduct. Sam Antar joins us now. Sam, welcome to the Stone Zone.
And thank you for having me on, Roger. Appreciate it.
The Attorney General insists that these criticisms of her, which you have published on your website, whitecollarfraud.com, are politically motivated, that this is retaliation and revenge because she, at least temporarily, convicted Donald Trump using a law that no one has ever used in New York State, claiming that the president actually inflated the value of his assets in order to make commercial loans for his real estate company, loans that he paid back in full. In fact, the lenders made $40 million in interest, and they all said they would do so again. That case, I should point out, is on appeal, and many lawyers believe that it will be overturned. Classic example of lawfare. But I want to get this clear at the top. Sam, you don't work for Donald Trump. You're not a Republican. I don't even think you voted for Donald Trump, and your motivations are your own. This is not Trump directed. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. My investigation of Letitia James started as part of a process of me investigating other New York City officials, which I had published on my blog, and she was just next online. When I first saw her financial disclosures, I noticed very huge red flags, and I said, okay, now let me just focus on her for the moment, which now is about a month. Go ahead.
So much for the idea that Sam Antar, our guest today, is politically motivated. Let's remember it was Letitia James who said, no person is above the law. Well, that, unfortunately, also for her, applies to her because of Sam Antar's discoveries and the publication of the facts. The head of the Federal Home Finance Administration has sent a criminal referral to the U.S. Justice Department. Whether the Justice Department is going to take action, that remains to be seen. But when we come back, I want to get into this with Sam Antar. Once again, you find him at whitecollarfraud.com. What I like about your website, Sam, is that you have all of the actual documents linked to make your overwhelming case that Letitia James, the chief law enforcement officer of the state of New York, has engaged in serial mortgage fraud and also, I think, cheated the taxpayers of New York when it comes to her expenses. And it's all on your website. Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Stone Zone.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. We're visiting with Sam Antar. He is the editor and publisher of whitecollarfraud.com. And he is among one of two investigative journalists who have uncovered a pattern of mortgage fraud by New York Attorney General Letitia James. She denies everything, but we're going to get into that. So, Sam, give us an overview of what your research has shown.
Okay. First of all, my overview will include work of Joel Gilbert, who's also done some fantastic work, so that people understand that I did not do this entirely myself. There were other people that found other aspects of this fraud. Starting around 1983 until 2021, there's a series of mortgages that Letitia James entered into, first on a Queens property and later on a Brooklyn property, that every single mortgage that was filed contained false information. In 83, when she was much younger, she bought a property with her dad as father and daughter, but she took a mortgage as husband and wife. In 2001, she purchases a property in Brooklyn by herself, and every mortgage from 2001 to 2021 shows the building as having 1 to 4 units. Some say 1 unit, some say 2 units, some say 3 units, some say 4 units. The problem with that is that the certificate of occupancy lists 5 units, and that's the paramount document that underwriters go by. And by misrepresenting the number of units as 4 or less compared to 5, which the certificate of occupancy states, she saves money on her mortgages as well. Interest, she can put lower down payments on subsequent refinancing. She saves money on insurance, etc. So there's a whole host of financial benefits that have accrued to her, starting in 1983 with the father-daughter, her husband-wife, and subsequently with the number of units where she's accrued a substantial financial benefit. She tries to claim that all of this was a mistake, but it's not a one-off. I get it. People make a mistake. We all make mistakes. But every single mortgage, you're talking about at least 11 mortgages and refinancings that contain false information that accrued to her benefit. The second area goes to Virginia. In 2023, she purchased a property in Virginia with her niece. She was supposed to occupy that property because she'd made a representation to the bank that she intended to make it her primary residence. The problem here is, why would she intend to make that property a primary residence when it's only a week or two before the Donald Trump trial? And the mortgage required is to occupy the property within 60 days, which she did not. So there you have a situation whereby she falsified information in order to get better mortgage terms, because mortgages where the parties occupy as a primary residence means that she saves a lot of money on interest and underwriting and insurance, et cetera, than when you're not occupying a property. Then you have another property in Virginia that she purchased in 2020, where there are 2 mortgages that are disclosed on her financial disclosures with New York State, but can't be found in the property records, and 1 mortgage that's in the property records that's not disclosed to New York State. Altogether, those 3 mortgages, whether they're disclosed or not, and whether in their property records or not, total over $500,000 for a property that she values at most at $150,000. So the question is, how was she able to get mortgages totaling over 300% of the value of her property? Also, why are these mortgages unrecorded? She also has another mortgage with Citizens Bank in Brooklyn, where she puts it on our financial disclosure in New York State. It can't be found in the property record. Now, the motivation for not recording a mortgage in New York City, I get, because you want to save 2% on the mortgage tax, but that's a benefit that only accrued to her. The responsibility for filing mortgages in New York are with the lender. Why would the lender put themselves in such a vulnerable position by not filing the mortgage in New York? Likewise, in Virginia, why would a lender give her 2 mortgages that are on the financial disclosure but not recorded, whereby they're no longer really a secured creditor? They're just like an unsecured creditor. They're no longer in first place. So there's a lot of questionable behavior here. But each and every one of these questionable behaviors, whether it involves the two Virginia properties, a Brooklyn property, the Queens property she bought with her father, every single questionable transaction created a financial benefit for her. And that was no accident.
Now, her defense, the Attorney General's defense, is that she signed a power of attorney specifically telling her broker that she would not be a resident of the property in Virginia. She also claimed that the mortgage that she got did not require her to be. How do you address that?
Both are false. First of all, she told her broker that she did not intend to make it her residence 2 weeks before she filed the power of attorney intending to make it her residence. Okay? So she changed course 2 weeks after. She didn't correct it after the fact. She corrected it before the fact. Not really corrected it before the fact. She made a contradictory statement early on, which she clarified that she intended to make it her primary residence. Now, her lawyer tried to play a game whereby he said that there was another document subsequent to the power of attorney where she told the broker that she intended to make it, that she did not intend to occupy the property as her primary residence. The problem is when you read the documentation carefully, and I put it out on my blog today, the document that he refers to as happening after she filed the power of attorney actually happened before she filed the power of attorney. He claimed that she filled out a mortgage application after she filed the power of attorney. Well, guess what? Power of attorneys are issued after all the paperwork is done. It's just for closing purposes. So her own lawyer undermined her own defense. In other words, on August 3rd, she says that she doesn't intend to occupy Virginia as a primary residence. On August 17th, she says, I do intend to occupy as my primary residence. By August 31st or September 1st, the mortgage is closed, and the mortgage is underwritten on the fact that she and her co-borrower both intended to occupy the property as their primary residence within 60 days, which at least Letitia James never did, which is a violation of the mortgage, and also based upon her prior conduct constitutes fraud in the inducement. It also shows intent to deceive.
I think it is abundantly clear if she did move into the property in Virginia, making that her principal residence, then under New York state law, she would not be eligible to be a New York Attorney General. I looked at the law. As soon as she moves, the office would be automatically vacated. And, of course, if she didn't move but said she was going to, as she says in this sworn document, well, then she is guilty of mortgage fraud. Based on your reports, the head of the Federal Home Finance Administration has sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. What the Department of Justice is going to do remains to be seen, although there are public reports that a number of these mortgage companies and others have been subpoenaed in their investigation. I note, however, that the New York Daily News, the Albany Times-Union, perhaps the worst newspaper in America, and the New York One journalist Errol Lewis all insist that there's nothing to see here, that these are minor clerical errors, and this is all some kind of a political retribution play. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I am no fan of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I mean, what Trump did with him, I disagree. Giving him a pardon, okay, I respectfully disagree with that, okay? Now, when the first hint of corruption by Eric Adams came out, all these same outfits were all over him right away. In other words, this is the worst thing that ever happened, blah, 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 blah. Now, when it's a politician that they favor, they have amnesia. They try to play down the gravity of the offenses. And that, to me, is really sickening because the media is supposed to be the fourth estate. Okay? The media is supposed to hold power, make power uncomfortable, hold their feet to the fire. Here in New York, the media is basically PR people masquerading around as journalists. It's a shame. It does a disservice to all of us, whether we're Republicans or Democrats. We need a legitimate media. Today, we don't have one.
Yeah, no, the last New York politician that Errol Lewis assured us did nothing wrong was Elliot Spitzer. We know how that worked out. Sam, the best I did a little quick research before the show, but it appears to me that the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, is having the Attorney General's office pay for her defense. If that is accurate, that would seem to me in itself to be an abuse of power. She is not accused here of misusing her authority as Attorney General, although that may yet come. But these were personal actions that you reported on at your website, whitecollarfraud.com.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't seen anything that verifies that she's taken money from the state for her defense. There are ways I monitor it because New York State does disclose every single disbursement that's made in almost real time, and I haven't seen any disbursement that relates to them paying for the legal fees. However, what she's trying to do, let's say that they haven't paid the legal fees, and they might have, I don't know. I haven't found it, let's put it that way. What she's trying to do is she's trying to make it like she's being villainized because of her role as Attorney General of New York, so that she would have a legitimate reason to get reimbursement from the state. Because if her misconduct is unrelated to a job, she has to pay out of pocket. So she's trying to frame this as a retribution thing, not only to misdirect people away from her own wrongdoing, but also trying to make sure that if she gets state money or is getting state money, that people can't legally challenge it.
This is yet another issue which you have reported on, and that is her use of state resources to reimburse herself and to pay for her flights. What is the latest on that?
Okay. I put out a FOIL request to New York State requesting any and all documents to and from, invoice numbers, voucher numbers, flight logs, you name it. I asked for it to New York State. Just yesterday or the day before, I get an answer from the New York State Controller's Office saying, this is what we have. They give me an Excel spreadsheet with some document numbers, but they don't have the documents. I said, what the hell is going on here? You mean to say that New York State doesn't keep copies of invoice, doesn't keep copies of authorizations, doesn't keep copy of receipts, doesn't keep copies of the nature of a transaction? Come on. First of all, it's bad internal controls and it's bad business practice. But aside from that, it's telling me that possibly somebody is destroying documents. And New York City is due for an FBI raid. I kid you not. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but there is no reason that New York State does not have the documents I requested. Invoices backing up payments for private jets, vouchers, they have nothing. They have zero paperwork to offer me other than a spreadsheet regurgitating information that I already know.
Very, very interesting. Just one point of correction here. The Justice Department did not issue a pardon to Mayor Eric Adams. They declined to prosecute him in a standing indictment. There are 3 additional indictments against Adams that are still sealed that the public has never seen. All of them sealed, we're told, for purposes of national security. It's interesting to me that the one indictment we do know about pertains to campaign finance fraud. It is alleged in that indictment that Mayor Adams took $100,000 from Turkish nationals, laundered it through New York City residents, who then submitted it to the New York City's 8-to-1 campaign finance matching fund program. But the administration elected not to pursue those charges. The irony here, of course, is that I believe that an ongoing investigation into Letitia James' campaign financing will show that through the online payment processing app ActBlue, that James has taken in millions of dollars from donors who either, when they are interviewed, deny having given the contribution, or in some cases, donors who literally don't exist. So there's a lot more to this story than just the pattern of mortgage fraud. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Sam Antar, very interesting character, once himself convicted in one of the largest security fraud schemes in the country, paid his debt to society, and has reemerged using his expertise as a forensic accountant and investigator to ferret out fraud among public officials and those we elect to public office. We'll be right back with more of Sam Antar. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, don't go away.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. We're talking to Sam Antar. He's the editor and publisher of whitecollarfraud.com, and he is one of two investigative journalists who have uncovered a pattern of mortgage fraud by New York State's highest elected law enforcement officer, Attorney General Letitia James. Sam, you wrote, investigative journalism is like peeling an onion layer by layer. The truth gets harder to ignore. When it starts as a contradiction between two mortgage statements, has become something far more serious. Evidence that suggests that New York's Attorney General knowingly signed a series of false legal documents. What began as a straightforward comparison of contradictory declarations has evolved into something far more significant, you wrote, by revisiting key evidence with fresh eyes and a deeper understanding of mortgage procedures. I've uncovered critical details initially overlooked. Each document, when placed in proper chronological context, tells a more troubling story. Now, Letitia James has gone out and retained the criminal defense attorney Abby Lowell. His last client was Hunter Biden. I'm familiar with Mr. Lowell's work. I remember when New York State Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno was charged with corruption and went to trial in Albany, a case in which I think he was essentially framed for theft of honest services. He did go to trial, and with Lowell's defense, Bruno was convicted on all counts. The U.S. Supreme Court then vacated that conviction, saying that the law under which Bruno had been convicted was constitutionally too vague, whereupon Bruno fired Abby Lowell, hired a bulldog local criminal defense attorney, and was, upon retrial, acquitted on all counts. Lowell himself actually sent me a letter in his defense of Hunter Biden, urging me or directing me to preserve all of my documents and emails pertaining to Hunter Biden's emails and his laptop. That was easy because, well, I don't have any. Never did. Everything I know about Hunter Biden's laptop, I read in the New York Post or at Breitbart News. I think that Lowell's 27, I think it is, page letter to the U.S. Justice Department taking a proactive, preemptive strike against these claims was actually a mistake. To me, it shows that the Attorney General is exceedingly nervous. Now you add to this unhinged performance where she starts screaming and hollering about, I'm not afraid of no president. She went to college. Why does she speak like that, Sam?
Because really, she is not a litigator. She is just a front person. She really does not understand the law. All she is a marketing tool. That's the way that I read it. Okay, because the best thing that her attorney did for the prosecutors was to rebut the referral letter and to leak the rebuttal out, because the rebuttal that they leaked out that was written pen and paper by Abby Lowell actually incriminates his client more than the referral does. So my point being is that Abby Lowell, to me, if you want to go to jail, hire Abby Lowell as your attorney. What he did is legal malpractice, incompetent, and dumb. He didn't even understand his own timeline. He said August 3rd, she said that she didn't intend to occupy a property in Virginia. August 17th, she did intend to occupy the property in Virginia, but subsequent to that, it was corrected that she did not intend to occupy the property in Virginia. But that subsequent correction that he claims was made was actually made 3 weeks earlier. So the point being is that he doesn't know his own timeline. He does sloppy work. He shoots from the hip. And I'll tell you, if I were doing crime, I would never hire this idiot.
Sam, you do tell it like it is, why we love having you on the Stone Zone. Again, you can go to Sam's own blog, whitecollarfraud.com. He documents everything he has said here today. Also, we have a standing invitation to the Attorney General. She's welcome to come into the Stone Zone anytime to respond to anything we have reported on today. I want to thank our guest, Sam Antar, for joining us today and to laying out the facts as he has reported them. Also want to thank our listeners for tuning in. Until we meet again, God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?